In a lot of video games, there's a set series of levels to follow. Linear titles tend to hold your hand through the narrative, and open world games try to give you a sense of freedom. Even with all those measures designed to steer you in the right direction, there are still those rare locations we weren't meant to discover. I'm Jess McDonald for WhatCulture, and this is a list of 10 secret video game locations that hardly anybody found. If you want to find them for yourself, beware, we will be spoiling it. Number 10. World of Warcraft, the Pool of Upside Down Sinners. Opening the list is World of Warcraft. The world of Azeroth needs no introduction. Millions of players have explored thousands of digital square miles through the years. You'd think the entire place would have been mapped out by now, but for very diligent players, there were still secrets to be found. Buried within Morgan's plot is a seemingly inaccessible crypt. Known as the Pool of Upside Down Sinners, the room was placed behind the Tower of Karazhan. Some players were able to glitch inside and find skeletons hung from the ceiling. There's something sinister about the place, as if an act of great torment took place there, which only adds another story to WoW's extended set of tales. For a time, it was rumored that this section of the game was unfinished and left abandoned after feeling its content would push up the game's age rating to M in the United States, thus dampening its sales potential. Blizzard did debunk this theory sometime later, merely saying it was a section that ended up left out of the game. Since its discovery, the once secret location has been opened up in patch 7.3.0. It's accessible to those who can solve the riddle of the Lucid Nightmare in order to obtain the unique mount within. Number 9. Fallout 4 Developer Room. Blizzard's latest entry into the Fallout series, we don't talk about Fallout 76, had plenty of locations to explore throughout the Commonwealth. This was the main driving force that compelled players to complete the game's many quests and level up their character. Even after completing the main story, however, there was still an area or two left undiscovered. One of these was a secret room used by the developer for debugging purposes. When experimenting with the game's code and console commands, the PC community stumbled across the hidden location by typing in the code COCQA smoke and were instantly teleported to the location. It was compact and contained a better means to troubleshoot the game's systems without the open world getting in the way. While only intended as a spot for developer testing, word soon got round about how to access the location, and one could find a lot of really good gear in there early. The room also included firing ranges and every type of crafting bench. In a sense, it could easily serve as a settlement with no need to worry about all the random raider and mutant attacks seen in the main game. The excitement of the discovery was, however, short-lived for some players who had discovered that there was no exit from the room. Another console command, COC Sanctuary Ext, would eventually remedy this issue. Number 8. The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, Chris Houlihan Room. The long-running Legend of Zelda franchise has had its fair share of secrets through the years, from the notoriously fragile giant's knife in Ocarina of Time to areas off the beaten path in Breath of the Wild. These gained recognition in their own right, but one of the most elusive secrets was found in A Link to the Past. The 1991 classic is widely regarded as one of the best entries in series history. Having reached over 4 million units sold, it was only a matter of time before players found the Chris Houlihan Room on the SNES title. Back in 1990, the magazine Nintendo Power held a contest where the winner would get their name programmed into a future game release. The task was to take a picture of WarMech in the original Final Fantasy and send it in to the publication. The winner of this contest was Chris Houlihan, but the end result was fairly small and insignificant. A Link to the Past features a failsafe room that can only be found if the SNES game happens to crash in between other locations. The room contains exactly 45 rupees and would reappear in A Link to the Past and Four Swords in the 2000s. Number 7. Half-Life: The GABE Newell Room. The debut title from Valve Corporation, Half-Life's blend of FPS action and innovation, made it an instant classic in 1998. Directed by company founder Gabe Newell, abbreviated as Gaben to some, this guy has reached memeable status around the world. Many of the mysteries in Half-Life involve the meddling and appearances of G-Man, but look a little further and there's far more to be found. In a random joke appearance, Valve's founder plastered pictures of himself in a room that could only be accessed by clipping out of bounds in Chapter 3 Unforeseen Consequences. Early on in the game, Freeman will descend down a large cargo elevator. Once you reach the bottom, you'll then have to use the console command noclip to go out of bounds and fly through to the room. With Gabe's face all over the walls, it's an oddball Easter egg that set the stage for all memes to follow. Number 6. Ratchet & Clank series, the Insomniac Museum. Insomniac Games' longest running series has offered awesome platforming from the PlayStation 2 right up to the PlayStation 5. By offering accessibility for all ages and maintaining its winning formula, the series has mostly maintained its high critical reception. Typically in these games, you'll be running around the many planets and making your way towards some MacGuffin or another. There's also many additional unlockables to be found, from gold bolts to skill points awarded for accomplishing various feats. The one secret that eluded the franchise's fans for a time was the Insomniac Museum. This was a highly sought after Easter egg location that had the developer create an in-game mock-up of their studio. After a lighter version was tested in Ratchet & Clank 2, its first major appearance was in Ratchet & Clank 3 on Planet Kerwan in the game's latter half. Tucked away behind a teleporter that could only be used at 3 AM or for players who 100%ed the game, Insomniac put in a clever level filled with behind-the-scenes material, tough hacking puzzles, and playable concepts that didn't make it into the final title. The Insomniac Museum would make a return 4 years later in Ratchet & Clank: A Crack in Time as a completion reward. Number 5. GoldenEye 007 – Golden Island. The game that revolutionized first-person shooters on console, GoldenEye 007 from Rareware, was not only one of the best shooters of its day, but also a prime example of how to do a movie tie-in game right. Of all the games based on the British spy, none have been more revered. Blasting through the game's campaign on varying difficulties and mission modifiers provided much of the core action. Upon replaying the first mission though, keen-eyed players could spot an island off in the distance through the sniper rifle's scope. It appeared to be an outpost cut off from the main base. Eventually, some were able to get over to it by clipping out of the map. Unfortunately, what players got was rather disappointing. The game's Golden Island was merely an unused section of the game. There were no enemies, weapons lying around, or NPCs to interact with. Rare have since reflected on the secret location, stating they would have had to code a boat ride over to pick up some armor. Number 4. Halo 2 – The SCARAB gun on Metropolis. The original killer app for Microsoft's Xbox, the Halo trilogy, skyrocketed to fame among the gaming community. Before they were more fleshed out in Halo 3, it was the skulls that compelled players to search through the levels, earning gameplay modifiers to replay the campaign. Yet there was one more secret that only a handful of players could find in Halo 2. In the level Metropolis, Master Chief is tailing the SCARAB in New Mombasa. You proceed into a tunnel and there are also banshees tailing you. Hijacking one and somehow flying it through to the other side was a process in frustrating trial and error. Once in the next section of the level, persistent players were able to fly the Banshee up to the top of the city to find an unassuming plasma rifle hovering on its own. As it turns out, Bungie had included the SCARAB's cannon for the player to use. It was placed in an area almost nobody could reach, and yet just a few weeks after the game's launch in 2004, it was found. Number 3. Grand Theft Auto 3 – The Starting Location. Grand Theft Auto was already making waves with its top-down offerings on the PC and other systems, but it was the third mainline entry that really sent the franchise to superstardom. Rockstar's prowess for full player freedom often manifests itself with many a built-in secret. The game opens with Claude robbing Liberty City Bank only to be betrayed by his fellow crooks. Normally, the player never returns to this opening section, but when messing around in the game's open world, the opposite occurred. As the first Grand Theft Auto game in 3D, many elements had yet to be fully realized. This included flying vehicles. The only one to be found in this rendition of Liberty City was the Dodo. While it wasn't meant to fly due to the limitations of the renderware game engine, players were eager to take it in the air, and once they finally did, secrets were revealed. The trick to keep the plane flying is to keep it as level as possible, taking advantage of some bugs and glitches along the way. Players were able to fly out of bounds and discover the game's opening. While it was merely a set of assets that were used for one section, it was still a worthwhile discovery for the fans. Number 2. Batman Arkham Asylum – Hidden Concepts for Arkham City. Batman had been in some not so great games through the 80s and 90s, but when Rocksteady took the reins, things really changed. With Batman Arkham Asylum, they gave the Caped Crusader his finest playable release up to that point. The developer went all in, pouring on the fan service, whether it was the references to past stories in the Batman mythos or the audio tapes you could find around the environments. On occasion though, you could stumble across something that wasn't tied in with the collectibles. Rocksteady was so passionate about the title that they threw in an Easter egg that would connect to the game's follow-up. It was rather bold of them to do this, considering superhero licensed games hadn't been doing very well up to that point. It also took players some time to discover the hidden area, as it wasn't laid out for the player to discover normally. Hidden inside Quincy Sharp's office in Arkham Asylum, an explodable wall unmarked in Batman's detective vision led to a sneak peek of the sequel. It laid out structure plans for the walled-off section of Gotham that would eventually become a giant super prison. By implementing this section into the game, Rocksteady was able to both contribute to the lore of their series, while also whetting players' appetites for the 2011 sequel. Number 1. Demon's Souls Remake: The Secret Door. Finally, we come to Demon's Souls, the game that kicked off the Soulsborne genre and skyrocketed From Software to an industry name. One of the components that made Demon's Souls so enthralling was its many mysteries. The story progression, pathways, and obstacles in your way were rarely made clear, making it all the more enticing to unravel the finer details of the title. Some of Boletaria's most exciting and enticing secrets weren't found for years. Over a decade later, the game returned, remade for the PlayStation 5, and Bluepoint Games saw fit to add a few new riddles. Most notably, a cryptic illusory wall appeared in Stage 1-3. For some time following its recent release, the community had no idea how to open it. Players tried all sorts of tricks to get in, but to no avail. Turns out getting inside meant acquiring all 26 of the rare ceramic coins, found when completing stages in fractured mode. Trading these off for a rusty key, the player Distortion 2 was the first to go inside, claiming some high-level penetrator's armor within. Let me know down in the comment box what your favorite video game secret has been. I've been Jess for WhatCulture. Make sure you stay tuned for way more content, and I will see you again soon.